am Dr. Houston, veterinarian with Assistance Animals Consulting. Today we have a special guest joining us for our conversation in celebration of World Tourism Day, Dr. Nelva Bryant, founder of Transportation Consultants LLC. Dr. Bryant is an airline industry veterinarian. Prior to COVID-19, she served as Delta's industry first staff veterinarian and helped to ensure the safety of pets during air travel. Her role at Delta allowed her to focus on air travel of pets, gain insight into the air transportation process, and determine ways to ensure pets arrive at their destination safely. She earned her Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree and completed veterinary pathology residency at Cornell University of Veterinary Medicine and has over 15 years of veterinary clinical experience as a small animal practitioner and relief veterinarian. She also earned a Master's of Public Health degree at the University of Iowa, MPH for Practicing Veterinarians Program. A recent retiree of the U.S. Public Health Service, where she served for 20 years, Dr. Bryant completed the final years of her active duty career at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Due to COVID-19 and its impact on the airline industry, the opportunity to pivot presented itself, and she developed DVM Transportation Consultants, a consulting firm that is available to supply services to airlines, veterinarians, and animal owners. Dr. Bryant, wowzers.
Thank you. Wow. That's good on paper, I guess. It's been a long journey, as you know, as far as career in veterinary medicine. It's just long. If I look back, I would say to myself, to anyone that's moved along in their career, closed doors should not stop your opportunity. They just redirect your path. And it seems like my path led me to where I am right now. So I'm really thankful for that. Definitely didn't plan for it to be in this area or to be in this sector working in the airline industry, but I'm very thankful for the opportunity. And again, my background kind of led me to it. So
awesome. Yeah, no, thank you. We are looking forward to engaging with you in this conversation and hearing your insight and expertise. So let's get to it.
Okay, sounds good to me. Sounds good.
Awesome. So the first question we have are there specific forms needed to complete for assistance animals to travel both domestically and internationally?
Well, great question. And let's see. To travel internationally or domestically by air, the airline may require certain documentation from you. That's one thing that's separate right there. But to get to your final destination and I'm focusing primarily internationally, there will be requirements to travel with your pet to gain entry into that country and everything, and you have to be aware of it. And also, let me back a little bit. It's also important domestically, especially if you're traveling to Hawaii. If you do not have the appropriate documentation to enter into Hawaii, it will be very, your pet will not be allowed entry, even if it is a service animal and all these requirements. And this is based upon the fact that most countries, again, for us domestically, Hawaii, and then internationally for other countries, they want to prevent, either the country could be a rabies-free country or state. There may be diseases that they do not have in their country, but it's endemic in the United States. So they want to make sure the pets are free of this or the service animals are free of this before they enter into those destinations. So there will be documentation and everything that's required to travel internationally and domestically if you're going to Hawaii, separate from what's needed for the airline.
So essentially, basically, it's really about when you're looking at these forms and preparing, it's really about whether it's domestic or international, ensuring that these animals are disease-free, right?
Yeah, that's the main thing. Really, honestly, if you think about it, I mean, I think we lose the fact of knowing that we do love animals, and there are family members, and service animals, they're also providing a service for that family member. We have to realize also there are animals too, and there are diseases that are inherent in them that potentially we can get, or they can spread to other animals in the other country. Or think about worst case scenario. What if you travel to a country and your service animal is exposed to something that is not protected against? So this is very important that you follow and make sure for disease prevention.
Yeah, disease control and prevention is really important. And again, it's, to that point of looking at the protection of the support animal, ensuring and advocating for their health and wellness as well when they're going into their country. Yes. So with that being said, while we're talking about international travel, what are some of the main rules or regulations to consider when traveling international with an assistance animal? You kind of named one.
Wow. Well, goodness, I did a presentation on kind of digging deeper to learn more about international travel with pets in general, and the entry requirements that are needed. And my goodness, it is really detailed, and I don't think folks really realize that. You can go to the USDA's website. It's a USDA pet travel website, and you can determine the country that you want, and they'll list it. But goodness, it's a lot of information. You can't think of, say if you decide 2 weeks out, I'm gonna travel to Australia with my pet. Well, you can travel, and it could be a service animal as well. But I want to travel to Australia with my service animal. It's very unlikely that you'll be able to enter with your service animal, because there's a list of requirements that are needed. And it's more than just, oh, well, my dog is, my service animal is current on rabies. No, we need a rabies vaccination. You may need the rabies titer. You may need proof that it's treated for internal parasites, external parasites. I mean, there's a list of things that has to be done. Honestly, depending on the country, you might need a pet passport for them. Microchipping is very particular in other countries. I believe you have to give the rabies vaccination and microchipping on the same day. If you don't, say you give the microchip, rabies vaccination, then a month later you're microchipped. Well, guess what? You're gonna have to repeat that rabies vaccination again, because they want it on the same day or after the microchipping, kind of thing like that. So there's a lot of specific requirements to enter a different country. And the sad thing about it is, or the challenging thing about it, I'll put it that way, is that these requirements are not consistent for each country. It varies by country.
Yeah, I know that's a big thing with practicing clinical veterinarian. I've spoken with some clinical veterinarians, small animal practitioners, who really put the responsibility on the pet owner or the service, the owner of the service animal, that they have to be the ones to look into what those regulations are from the USDA. On the specific country you're traveling to. And I know some veterinarians that will do the legwork themselves. It really becomes challenging for us here as Assistance Animals Consulting. It's a little bit of both. I think it is the responsibility of not only the handler, but even the pet parent, that they need to dig into what these time frames are. There's some places where, some countries where you have to get the rabies vaccine 3 months prior to travel. So you really need to know what all these specific restrictions and regulations are, so you can time your travel accordingly. I really don't think it's fair to put that sole responsibility on the veterinary professional. I think it needs to be on the traveler.
I agree totally. I mean, as someone asked me a question, they were saying, who's responsible for making sure that the pet meets all the requirements for the destination country? And to a certain, the pet owner, service animal owner, yes, they're responsible. But if the veterinarian is signing off on the documentation, there's some responsibility on that part too, that they need to be aware of it. Because again, if you're signing that, attesting to the health of the animal and everything as far as all the required documentation and the testing that's needed, you're signing off on it, then you should be accountable for some of that.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is difficult. I would imagine, I mean, being in straight clinical practice, surgeries, trying to juggle everything together. And then now you have to make sure this animal is, as you're saying, on schedule. At 3 months, we need this. At 2 months out, we need this. And all the way through to about to, leaving for their destination, making sure everything is in order. That's a difficult and that's a challenge for a lot of veterinarians, I would imagine. And again, honestly, that is a service that's needed, really, because no one has the time, or they may not have the time and the just the know-how to make sure the animals are following along the right process. And to think that I had a situation when I was working with Delta. A person was traveling to Hawaii, and they didn't realize that Hawaii, yes, it's U.S., but they didn't realize Hawaii has specific requirements to enter there, and with their pet, and the pet was held in quarantine. And I believe they were angry with Delta because they said Delta should have known this. I'm like, but isn't that almost like I take an Uber or Lyft somewhere and we get to our destination and they tell me that I get to the destination and my animals aren't allowed. How is it the airline is responsible for knowing the entry requirements for your pet? Yeah. So some responsibility has to be for the animal owner. You have to be responsible and know the requirements. They are available, but again, I don't know. I think we're in a generation, in a stage right now where everyone wants to pass blame on things, but there should be some responsibility if you're traveling with your pet of knowing the requirements, entry requirements, and everything going to your country. And again, if you're veterinarians sign off, they also have some little responsibility with it as well.
Yeah, I agree. We answered quite a few questions in this particular conversation on international travel. And I want to be very clear to our audience on that website for if you're considering international travel. And I know right now, while we're in these pandemic times, there may not be as much international travel, but you certainly should get familiar with this website. And I believe it is www.aphis, that's APHIS.USDA.gov. And you can, a pet parent or handler can find out what are all of the rules and regulations for whatever country you're traveling to.
Definite. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm probably going too fast with it too, so I apologize if I'm speaking too quickly. But it's very important. It's very important that you meet the requirements of that destination country, because worst case scenario they can say is euthanasia. They can say humane euthanasia. They can have mandatory quarantine if available, or they can turn you around and say your pet is not allowed in this country. And for a person that has a service animal and needs that animal, that's awful. And then, like I said, and the fear, oh my God, you're going to euthanize my pet or quarantine. I mean, it's very important that you comply with the entry requirements for your destination country.
Yeah, that is extremely important when you're just thinking about, the amount of training that service animals provide to their handler, how they're helping them with their overall health and wellness and their day-to-day activities. So for the aspect of personal health and safety, for the aspect of the financial loss, the emotional loss they could potentially experience if they do not go through the proper channels and really know what they need to do when they're traveling, it could get them in some very challenging situations.
Oh, definitely. So it's extremely important. Honestly, like I said, in my research and learning, just comparing it, one thing that I noticed that within this whole process of traveling internationally with service animals, pets, is the fact that there needs to be a standardization of the entry requirements into each country, or going across the board with all countries, because some countries might require, say, a health certificate alone, signed by a USDA accredited veterinarian. Others might require an international health certificate which is you obtain from that destination country, and then you have to make sure that's done. There might be some, like I said, that have the rabies titer test has to be done. It has to be a specific test, specific locations where it's done at. Make showing proof that they're treated for internal and external parasites. There's some that have testings for, I think it's like Babesia. I mean, trust me, it's a long list. And also some countries you have to be heartworm negative, but it varies.
Yeah.
Then I might look at another country and they just want just a simple health certificate, and that's it. So there needs to be a standardization of the whole process and everything to make it easier for the customer, the person who traveling with their service animal, their pet, because it just makes it difficult across the board regarding all the different requirements.
Yeah, that is challenging. We got a ways to go to get all those these countries to get on the same
Yeah.
mindset in regards to these regulations to make it more convenient for everybody involved. So
and once you travel, depending on your length of stay in your destination country, you also have to make sure you meet the requirements to come back to the United States. There are some countries, and unfortunately for the United States, our requirements are not really that stringent, unfortunately. We're the rabies vaccination certificate from certain, that's kind of like the requirements. It must appear healthy, and everything is kind of really not tough at all, really, honestly. But one thing we do have to remember, though, there's certain countries that we have some restrictions with, such as Egypt. There were situations with Egypt where there were dogs that came in from Egypt that actually broke with rabies a couple of years back, and they came in with suspecting fraudulent documentation. So at the present time, I don't believe they've changed it, but CDC has basically have banned all animals coming from Egypt to the United States. Now that's important for someone, say, with their service animal to know and learn, because what if you decide, hey, I want to go to Egypt and I have my service animal? When you get over there, just be aware, it'll be risky coming back with your pet, because again, they've made these restrictions in place regarding that. So we need to be mindful of any restrictions that we have coming into the United States, if there's any further over the years coming up, if there are any other restrictions with pets coming into the US, dogs and cats.
Wow, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's move on to our next question. Are there provisions for assistance animals when they need to relieve themselves, or maybe get water when they're actually traveling? How are we in the airline industry?
Well, I do know in the airline industry have you noticed they have the gosh darn, I forgot what they're called. They have their service animal rooms that you go inside, and they have the green turf and little potty areas for pets. That's for before boarding on their plane and everything. I believe you can also get water and what have you in those locations as well. That's before flight. Once during flight, the thought is that they will be able to relieve themselves in a sanitary method. I don't know how sanitary it could be, but that's the hope, that I guess having the little potty stops in the airlines, it's on grounds and everything, you have to take them outside, that will prevent them or the need to go in flight. But I guess that all depends on the duration of flight. But I think honestly, most airlines, it's stated they must relieve themselves in a sanitary method. I personally haven't spoken to anyone to find out how. But,
yeah. Our goal here at Assistance Animals Consulting is to advocate for the health and well-being of the animal and how they are taken care of. And of course, being able to eliminate properly is important, but also we have to ensure the health, the wellness of other individuals, people passively and actively engaging with these animals. And our reality is that there are diseases that can be communicated through urine or feces. And so honestly, I'm not aware of any way an animal can relieve themselves sterilely, you know, on an airline, so to speak. Sterile is not the best word, but to relieve themselves without exposure to other people, particularly a larger size dog. But at the end of the day, you know, yes, within the different airports, there are areas, and it's up to you to train, have your support animal trained where they can go the duration of whatever length of time to of your air travel, so that they won't have any elimination issues and it won't be challenging to their bodies.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you think about, again, I know it's stated they must eliminate themselves in a sanitary method in cabin, but there's no space. We're already cramped. I don't know how that is done. And I've never spoken with anyone to find out. Have you ever spoken with anyone that potentially the pet went while in flight?
I haven't had the experience, but I know that my recommendation would be puppy pads, you know, but it, you know, that's the best sanitary ability that you can do. But I haven't had a client where I've had that experience yet. So, now, is approval from a veterinarian necessary when traveling with an assistance animal?
I don't believe approval is required, but my hope and what I'm advocating for is for veterinarians to kind of start giving their input as far as the health and safety of the animal, because now we're hoping we have an assistance animal, service animal, and he's healthy. But what if, as they age, it develops a cardiac condition, respiratory condition, or seizures, or what have you? Those pets, even though they may provide a service for someone, might not be in the best interest for that animal to travel. So I'm advocating for veterinarians to start speaking and saying, on behalf of that animal, even though, yes, it might be a service animal for you and he might have a purpose, maybe transport for this particular animal is not ideal. And I think we should start speaking up on that.
I would agree with you on that. This is a challenge, and this is one of the reasons why I started Assistance Animals Consulting, is because when you're navigating providing a service for a client, as a general practitioner, sometimes it becomes challenging. Your decision making can be slightly skewed when you're trying to provide a service to a client and retain them as a client and customer, where if you're not providing them their wants, then, you know, the next person over will, and it's you know, a loss for you. And I think that it's important when it comes down particularly to some of the consequences of traveling with support animals, assistance animals who are not healthy, who are not appropriately trained behaviorally, or trained, period, you know, well, that as a profession, we have to start speaking up more and saying, no, I'm not signing off for this animal when you see health issues or behavioral issues that are concerning. The reality of it is sometimes when customers are coming in with these forms from the airlines, there are times when you're seeing that animal for the first time ever. So you have no clue, you know, what their overall health status is, or their behavioral status is. And in that moment, everything is all good, but they might be put in a situation during travel where it can complicate their health, or whether it's their physical health or their mental health, where they might experience some signs of aggression or fear-based aggression. So
yeah, you know, it's really difficult. It's a difficult situation for a veterinarian to assess as far as the behavior in animal and how they'll respond to this type of environment. I think one of the main reasons is because there's no way that we can simulate the environment to help train them and get them prepared for it. So that makes it really difficult and everything. So I know there's some veterinarians, I think there is a pushback as far as folks saying, veterinarians saying, as far as the behavior, being responsible for the behavior in animal, and we shouldn't be held responsible for it from the minimal time that, you know, most of us will see an animal. We don't see them under stress like that, and we don't, you can't evaluate them. But so it's hard for us to evaluate behavior, but medical conditions, assessing that, are they fit to fly? We need to start stepping up for that and start saying, okay, I don't know if say if approval, or we could just say in our best interest, we don't feel your animal should fly. But of course, ultimately, it's that person's decision.
Yeah.
And we can make it, that's their decision. So if something happens, you can't come back and say, you know, unfortunately, we're gonna blame, everyone blames everyone for everything this day and age, you know, and everything. But make the animal owner more responsible for their actions, not blaming everyone else regarding it. So
let me tell you, this is a hot button topic for you know, us as veterinarians and our veterinary colleagues. So we can really dig deeper into this conversation. It can go on and on, but nonetheless, I think those are really great points that you provided. Let's talk about vaccinations. Do airlines require service or assistance animals to have certain vaccinations, or is there required paperwork for service animals? And we kind of already talked about the other countries, but just in general.
In general, and again, I can only speak, say, for my experiences being with Delta, it might be different again for the other airlines, which, as again, I can go back to saying, if we can, there needs to be a streamlined process across all airlines as far as the requirements for traveling with pets in cabin. But I don't believe emotional support animals with Delta, they had to apply for that in advance to make sure their documentation was sent prior to travel. I don't believe that requirement is for service animals for them to submit the information in advance regarding that. But vaccinations, I believe, again, yes, they were required because, again, these animals are going to be in cabin. The vaccination requirements are, you know, minimal in a sense as far as public health, thinking more of rabies being the public health risk of that. The other vaccinations that we consider as far as communicable diseases in dogs, those usually aren't required, but probably need to start considering it if there's going to be other pets on board of the potential of communicable diseases with them. But yeah, there are vaccination and other documentation requirements for emotional support, and emotional support more than service animals. I don't think the service animals have to provide that in advance.
Yeah.
I believe that since they have to have it on them, and a lot of folks, I've heard folks complain and they'll say, well, they never asked me for, you know, oh, well, we needed a health certificate, but they never asked me to see the health certificate. And look at it this, I would say, look at it this way. We always carry our license with us. We always carry it all. We're not always asked for a license unless there's an emergency. So why not have this documentation available just in case of emergency? God forbid, an animal bites someone, at least you have documentation. He has a health certificate. He has been vaccinated against rabies and all that stuff up front. Travel with it instead of scrambling after the fact, trying to make sure all the documentation is ordered. Here, it's almost like the license for since right now here in the US, there's no pet passports for the animals. View the health certificate as almost like their license, how we carry ours, kind of thing like that.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice, just in general with traveling, making sure you have all that documentation on you in the event some circumstance happens that, you know, that requires you to be even more stressed out. And then the stress of trying to get all of this other paperwork to support your animal in their time of need for whatever reason. So I think that's a really good advice, Dr. Bryant. It's really great being able to have access to someone, that's been in the profession so as long as you have in the different areas that you practice. And, I'm really happy with how the direction that your professional life has gone to now.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'm glad at Assistance Animals Consulting, we have access to you to call you and get your insight and expertise on traveling, since traveling both domestic and international is very common nowadays and becoming even more common with people who are using support animals. So I appreciate you for your time today and everything that all the information that you provided for us.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And as you know, I look to you as well, because regarding service animals and emotional support animals, there's a lot of questions that I have. So I appreciate you always being open to me. So thank you.
Absolutely. So tell our audience, how can they follow you or connect with you?
Well, I have started. I'm advocating, like I said before, I'm advocating for change in the veterinary profession, get more involvement within the animal transportation process, also veterinary involvement in the airline industry itself, because we do need to be involved and able to analyze situations to ensure these animals make it to their destination safely. I've also developed a Facebook page, group, and also an Instagram presence with a site called When Pets Fly. If you have any questions regarding pet travel, I will be very happy to answer your questions and try to help get to help your pet get to its destination safely, basically. And within that site, the page and the group, I discuss the appropriate crates for travel, making sure your animals are fit to fly and healthy enough to fly, and discuss situations regarding that. Gosh, it's a bunch of stuff. But either way, please join. I would love to answer any questions you might have regarding your pet and travel. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bryant. And guys, please like, share, and follow Assistance Animals Consulting on our social media platforms as well. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as Instagram. You can also follow me on Instagram at that's Dr. Houston. And that's all for today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
All right.